Today on Blue World, Jonathan swims with huge schools of jellyfish. Will he get stung? But first, diving the incredible reefs of Palau. Meet Jonathan Bird, one of the world's top underwater nature cinematographers. Traveling the world on assignment for all the major networks, he is an Emmy Award-winning authority on the underwater world. In freshwater or salt, reefs, wrecks, or caves, Jonathan documents the world beneath the waves. Welcome to the Blue World.
The Republic of Palau is an unspoiled and remote island nation known as one of the world's top diving destinations. Consisting of more than 500 islands, surrounded by beautiful clear water and healthy reefs, Palau is definitely a diving paradise. It's also a bit famous for this brackish lake, filled with millions of non-stinging jellyfish. The water is consistently very clear, with visibility generally more than 100 feet. The narrow channels between the shallow reefs often have manta rays gulping down plankton in the current. And the green islands are a picture postcard of tropical paradise. Located 500 miles east of the Philippines, Palau isn't close to anything. After 2 days of flying, camerawoman Julia and I are on our way to the live-aboard dive boat that will be our home for the week, the Rock Islands Aggressor. This large catamaran is part of the Aggressor fleet, a worldwide brand of luxury boats catering specifically to divers. For 7 days, we will live on this amazing boat and have access to dive sites all around the islands of Palau. Our diving will be done from this smaller tender, which is fast and maneuverable for plucking divers out of the water as they surface. But the coolest part is the boat lift, where they lift the tender out of the water for easy access. We arrive with a bunch of other guests, welcomed with a cool drink.
Wow, this is great.
The crew unloads all of our gear while we get our first briefing on how everything will work on board.
Welcome aboard the Rock Islands Aggressor. Camera tables, of course, and in the cabin for cabins 1 through 8.
On the lower deck, we find the cabins where we all sleep. There's an outdoor seating area, a salon where we eat and relax, an upper deck to enjoy the sunsets, and of course the main dive deck where all the wet stuff stays. The first night, cruise director Ben Clark gives us our first dive briefing and introduces the crew. Early the next morning, we're all suited up in wetsuits and ready for our first dive. Dive Master Star gives us a briefing on the site. Palau has a lot of current, so paying attention is important. Then we board the tender for our first adventure. We have a few minutes to put on our gear during the ride out to the dive site with Captain Ike driving the boat. Finally, we get to the mooring. For our first dive, we're doing an easy site with no current.
1, 2, 3.
We are greeted with crystal clear conditions and an amazing reef drop-off. On the top of the reef, we find a chimney, which is basically a vertical hole in the reef that we can drop straight down into. I follow the twinkling light beams slowly into the depths. Soon the chimney turns horizontally, forming a sort of cavern in the side of the wall. At just over 100 feet, we enter a fantastic world where only our bubbles seem to know which way is up. The light down here is magnificent, but we only have a couple of minutes before we need to head up to shallower water for the rest of the dive. Cruising along the edge of the wall, I soar like an eagle ray over the precipice, which drops into the blue abyss out of sight. The wall forms a vertical habitat with huge red gorgonian corals reaching into the current for plankton to eat. A pair of sweet lips hangs out in their living room behind a pink soft coral gently swaying.
I think that's an interesting thing.
This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch on mobile devices or the big screen, all for free. No subscription required. Download WWII now.
Drifting with the current, I come across a hawksbill sea turtle hunting for sponges to eat. Once she gets used to my lights, she goes about her business. Hanging back a ways from the other divers so all their bubbles won't scare my subjects, I come across a spadefish hovering head up at a cleaning station. As I move in for a shot, the fish moves away, revealing a green sea turtle. At first, I think she's positioning herself for a nap in her favorite spot. But as I continue to observe, I notice that she's actually using the coral to scratch her shell. You might not suspect that a sea turtle could feel anything on the outside of its shell, but the fact that sea turtles are often seen scratching an itch definitely means they do. And sometimes humans offer a welcome bit of help. You should never just swim up to a sea turtle and try to scratch its shell. But if I see a sea turtle desperately trying to reach an itch, I feel it's okay to lend a gentle hand. And when that itch has been scratched, off she goes. After a relaxing safety stop, it's time to head to the boat. Julia and I pop up from the dive with lots of great memories and some fun footage for Blue World fans everywhere. Then it's back to the Rock Island Aggressor for some lunch. We're met by Repan with some cold drinks.
Oh, how great is this? Oh, you gotta love it.
Man, I can get used to this. While we all enjoy a nice lunch, Captain Ike is moving the Aggressor to another area. I expect to see a big wheel, but he's driving with a tiny joystick like a video game. Captain Ike has been navigating these waters for many years, and he knows how to get this huge vessel up the middle of a narrow channel barely deep enough for the keel in a strong current. After lunch, another dive briefing for another dive.
Questions? All right, let's go diving. Diving.
For us, every dive is new and exciting. You just have no idea what you might see. Once again, the tender is lowered into the water and off we go. Soon we're speeding over the waves towards a current-swept reef known for exceptional marine life. Palau is known for strong currents, and some of the dive sites have incredible shark action that can only be seen if the divers use reef hooks to hang on. So for this dive, we all have our reef hooks and we're ready for the current.
I've been hooked. I don't know about this. 1, 2, 3.
We have to roll in together and swim quickly down to the reef because you can't always swim against the current. But soon we realize that we have hit perfectly at slack tide, and there's almost no current. As a result, the fish are relaxing. Instead of swimming hard in formation to maintain their positions, they're acting like a bunch of kids at recess, just enjoying themselves. A big Napoleon wrasse comes over to say hi. That is one big fish. I'm glad he's friendly. This fish is almost always at this dive site, but tends to be the most curious when the current is not too strong. As I swim along the reef, the fish are so chill, they don't even mind my lights. A sea snake is hunting through the reef for shrimp. Out of the corner of my eye, I see one school of fish is spawning, and another school of fish swoops in to feast on the eggs. But some of those eggs will escape and turn into baby fish. There are so many fish that it's hard to figure out what to film next. But then I see bumphead parrotfish, some of the oddest looking characters on the reef. The bumphead is aptly named, and being the largest herbivorous fish on the reef, it eats algae that it gnaws from the reef with some big teeth. And the bump head is for fighting. At the top of the reef, a big school of snapper poses for my camera. If they look like they're not up to much, that's because they mostly chill out over the reef during the day, then head out to hunt over sandy habitats at night when their preferred food, things like shrimp and other crustaceans, comes out. Nearby, a school of gold spot sea bream with their characteristic golden yellow spots. I love these fish. They always look like they have sunlight shining on their butts. Like the snapper, they're waiting for darkness to hunt. Because let's face it, they aren't sneaking up on anything during the day with those golden butts. After an unexpectedly relaxing dive, Julia and I head reluctantly back to the surface. As the sun gets low in the sky, we cruise on back to the Rock Island Aggressor. We're hungry and ready to dry out a little. During dinner, we enjoy an insanely beautiful sunset, but we won't be dry for long because Julia and I are going on the night dive. One last time for the day, our tender hits the water, and soon after, we hit it too. Without strong sunlight filtered through seawater making everything look blue, the true colors of the reef pop under our video lights. Red, yellow, orange, and pink, these colors are so hard to see during the day. A sponge is covered in tiny worm-like sea cucumbers, surviving in a symbiotic relationship. A huge nudibranch the size of a shoe is searching for food. A drowsy anemone fish is wondering why some dude turned on the lights. A lionfish is on the prowl. We find some sea turtles and watch them for a while. They don't seem to be doing much. I would expect them to be sleeping, but they're just pacing back and forth up and down the reef. It's possible that these are females with eggs waiting for the right moment to head ashore to lay them in a nest. Our trip to Palau was quite an adventure. By the end of the week, we had explored shipwrecks and a plane wreck, visited Jellyfish Lake, dove in ripping currents using reef hooks, and we even saw a whale shark. But for those adventures, you will have to be patient, because our Palau adventure is to be continued.
Don't go away. Jonathan is about to meet thousands of jellyfish.
The Republic of Palau is an island nation consisting of more than 500 beautiful, unspoiled islands in the Pacific. This blue water paradise is a top destination for scuba divers from around the world. Located 500 miles east of the Philippines in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, Palau is well off the beaten path, a remote oasis in the sea. The Blue World team has been diving here for a week already, aboard the Rock Islands Aggressor, luxury live-aboard dive yacht. We have seen massive coral caverns, sharks, reefs, huge schools of fish, World War II shipwrecks, and dove in strong currents with reef hooks. But we've not yet visited one of the places that has made Palau famous, Jellyfish Lake. In Palau's southern lagoon lie the Rock Islands, a collection of more than 250 former coral reefs which were pushed up out of the water 35 million years ago by volcanic action. Many of the islands have lakes in the middle. Although some of the water in the lakes comes from rain, seawater slowly seeps through the porous limestone too. So the water in the lakes is salty, but not as salty as the ocean. Hence, they're called marine lakes. Jellyfish Lake is a marine lake, but this one is special. It's full of jellyfish. Now, technically, jellyfish aren't fish at all. They don't have a backbone, so the proper term is jelly. But Jelly Lake doesn't sound that good, so Jellyfish Lake it is. To reach Jellyfish Lake, we take a boat ride through the Rock Islands to Isle Malk, also known as Mechurchar Island.
Once we get off, because we can't.
After we show our permits, we have to hike up and over a big hill to reach the lake. And all the gear has to be hand carried up the steps. Soon we start suiting up, but we're only going to use snorkel gear because scuba gear is not allowed. I'll explain that later. Since we have a long swim to the jellyfish, our guide Matt is going to take the cameras over on a kayak. Julia and I will have to swim. The lake doesn't look very big, but when you have to swim across, it's big. As we start to see jellyfish, I get my camera and start filming. They're all over here because the jellyfish follow the brightest light on the lake. When one side is in shade, they swim to the sunny side. That's because these jellyfish are carrying a kind of algae in their skin called zooxanthellae. It's almost the same exact thing found in the skin of certain corals. The algae are plants and make energy from sunlight, which they share with the jellyfish. So basically, these jellyfish are photosynthetic like plants. They need the sun to survive and get almost all their energy requirements from the zooxanthellae. As they swim, they slowly rotate, giving all the zooxanthellae an equal share of direct sunlight. The jellyfish have been here for thousands of years. With generation after generation of jellyfish living secluded in the lake, having no contact with the ocean, the jellyfish have slowly changed. As they became more and more dependent on solar power and didn't have much prey to eat, they eventually lost their stinging cells. So these jellyfish, known as the golden jellyfish, are totally harmless. And they're found nowhere else in the world. They're related to the jellyfish found in other marine lakes in Palau, but these are special. I mentioned before that there's no scuba diving allowed in here. There are two reasons why. First of all, a diver down below would make a ton of scuba bubbles, which would tear the jellyfish apart. They're fragile creatures. But there's something in this lake that isn't good for divers either. The upper 50 feet of water where the jellyfish live is about half as salty as seawater on average and has fairly normal distribution of dissolved oxygen. It's your basic brackish water. But below 50 feet, there is almost no dissolved oxygen, and instead the water is filled with hydrogen sulfide, a toxic chemical produced as a result of decomposition of organic material that falls into the lake from the surrounding jungle. Because there is so little water flow in and out of the lake, there's nothing to flush out the hydrogen sulfide. It just sits down there, a toxic bathtub underneath the normal water above. Divers could be poisoned by absorbing the hydrogen sulfide through their skin, so they should never go down there. Only bacteria can live down in the anoxic layer. But in addition to hydrogen sulfide, the anoxic layer is filled with nutrients released by organic decomposition, things that plants love, like nitrogen and phosphorus. As a result, the jellyfish make short trips down to the very edge of the deep layer every night to absorb some of those nutrients. Their symbiotic zooxanthellae are plants, and like any plants, they need fertilizer. The jellyfish have developed an ability to tolerate a little bit of hydrogen sulfide exposure every day in order to feed nutrients to their symbiotic partners. So during the day, they give the zooxanthellae sunlight. During the night, they give them fertilizer. And the jellyfish enjoy a life without having to hunt for food. But that doesn't mean something doesn't try to hunt them. Near the lake shore, the bottom is covered with anemones. These animals are basically jellyfish that don't swim, but the anemones sting. They wait patiently for food, and their primary food is jellyfish. This is another reason for the jellyfish to stay out in the sunny part of the lake, not in the shade near shore. In the middle, they're safe. This guy wasn't so lucky. After an hour swimming with the jellyfish, I make my way back towards the dock. I can feel jellyfish bouncing off my skin as I go, and I am grateful that these little squishies don't sting. Jellyfish Lake is on every diver's must-see list, but you don't even need to be a scuba diver to experience it. It's one of the most spectacular experiences in the world, an incredible illustration of the complexity and beauty of life on Earth, an amazing wonder of the blue world.
Today on Blue World, Jonathan searches the Philippines for one of the world's most elusive octopuses. But first, he explores World War II shipwrecks in Palau. Meet Jonathan Bird, one of the world's top underwater nature cinematographers. Traveling the world on assignment for all the major networks, he is an Emmy Award-winning authority on the underwater world. In freshwater or salt, reefs, wrecks, or caves, Jonathan documents the world beneath the waves. Welcome to the Blue World.
The Republic of Palau is an island nation consisting of more than 500 beautiful, unspoiled islands in the Pacific. This blue water paradise is a top destination for scuba divers from around the world. Located 500 miles east of the Philippines in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, Palau is not easy to reach. Julia and I traveled all the way here to spend a week diving on the Rock Islands Aggressor, a luxury liveaboard dive yacht. We've already done some incredible dives. We've visited massive coral caverns, filmed some shark action, seen colorful coral, huge schools of fish, and dove in strong currents with reef hooks. It might seem like we've seen it all, but there's more. Today we're diving a Japanese shipwreck called the Iro.
Follow the mooring line now.
Palau is notorious for being the site of the bloodiest battle of the Pacific during World War II. Here, the United States and Japan fought for control of this tiny nation in a battle that took over 2 months. 13,000 men lost their lives. Remnants of the battle are everywhere, both above and below the water. It's a cloudy morning as we head out to the wreck of the Iro. But we soon forget the weather as we roll into the warm ocean. The Iro definitely has the shape of a ship, but there's something odd about it. This ship grew a beard. Closer inspection reveals that every square inch of the wreck is covered in a thick growth of healthy coral. Swimming across the deck at 25 meters, it passed through superstructure that barely resembles its man-made origins. The latter is the only giveaway. Sponges add a splash of red. Sinking into one of the cargo holds, the visibility drops significantly due to the deterioration of the cargo and a lack of water movement. We don't touch anything down here because there's a lot of live ammunition that could explode even after all this time. Good buoyancy is important. A layer of who knows what is suspended like clouds near the ceiling. There are cases of sake bottles. The wood has rotted out of these barrels, leaving just the metal hoops. There's even rope, almost 80 years old and still intact. The Iro was a Japanese warship, 470 feet long, that survived a sub-attack and an aerial attack before finally being sunk by a 1,000-pound bomb that hit the engine room in March of 1944. 75 years later, marine life has replaced this ship's violent past with a peaceful and benevolent existence. On the upper deck, a field of lettuce coral, the weight of which will eventually cause the deck to collapse as it rusts away underneath. Schools of fish find safety within the protection of a large stand of staghorn coral. You need to back up to realize this is not a natural reef, but more like a beautiful terraced garden. Soon, with our air running low, we head back to the boat.
Wow.
Our dive on the Iro gave us a taste of Palau's wide range of wrecks, leaving us wanting more. So, at the end of our week diving with Aggressor, we decide to stay a few more days and see a couple more wrecks. We head over to Sam's Tours, where we meet up with local wreck expert Matt Boyle. All of Sam's Tours boats are named after sharks, and today we're on the Silvertip. Captain Ford Castillo knows these waters like the back of his hand. We get our gear ready. And then it's time to head out. You don't even need to go diving to enjoy the beautiful scenery of Palau. Driving the boat between the islands is a blast and so picturesque. We've arrived at the wreck of the Teshio Maru. As we head down the algae-covered mooring line, soon the wreck comes into view. At only 24 meters maximum depth, this is one of the shallowest wrecks in Palau, and it has pretty good visibility too. The twisted wreckage of the Teshio Maru is fun to swim through. Matt leads the way on a tour of the wreck. Like the Eero, it has a ton of marine growth. But the bow still looks like a ship. As I round the corner of the bow, there's an opening in the hull that is probably a result of an explosion. Matt and I head inside. Bulkheads have rusted through, providing a way to sneak between holds safely. We can always see the way out. In the engine room, we find some kind of catwalk and some electrical boxes. It's difficult to determine what a lot of this stuff was after 75 years in the ocean. We turn and head back towards the light, making our way through the twisted remains of the hull plates. The Teshio Maru was actually washed up on shore after the attack, but slipped into the water following a storm, tumbling, twisting, and breaking on its way down the slope to its final resting place. This is one of the things I love about wreck diving, crawling through tight restrictions. Of course, it means you get rust stains on your wetsuit. On the end of a mast, I examine a small reef community, complete with sponges, fish, and coral, a microcosm of the Palau marine ecosystem. After a decompression stop on the mooring line, I reluctantly head back up to the surface. We switch our gear over to fresh scuba tanks because we have one more wreck to explore. And it's not a ship. This is a Japanese seaplane. The seaplane is an Ike E-13A Japanese Navy reconnaissance plane, powered by a 14-cylinder radial Mitsubishi engine. At only 38 feet long, it was not a large plane, which made it perfect for spy missions. And the pontoons meant it could land and hide anywhere in the maze of Palau's islands. Today, the pontoons are deteriorating, but they're still easily recognizable. Because the prop is not bent, the engine was likely not running when the plane sunk, and because the canopy is open, the pilot most likely escaped. Over time, the heavy Mitsubishi engine fell off, exposing the internals, but there isn't much to see since marine growth has covered everything over. There is some kind of electrical box on the bottom next to the wreck. Swimming behind the plane, I can see that the tail section is missing, allowing a look up inside the back of the cockpit. And I can also get a pilot's eye view out the windscreen. On the right wing, some kind of container, possibly for oil. Nearby, we find the tail section, completely overgrown in coral. Seems to me this would make a great place for fish to hang out. A fish hangar. It's not a very big wreck, but it's really cool because you can see the whole thing at once. Marine life doesn't seem to grow on the aluminum skin of a plane as much as it does on the steel of a shipwreck. So the plane still looks almost ready to fly.
Plane wrecks are cool, and it's hard to believe that that one is 70 years old. It's so intact, the metal's still shining.
Wreck diving is one of the most exciting ways to revisit history. The wrecks of Palau afford a unique and interesting glimpse into one of the most significant battles of World War II. But even for divers who are more interested in marine life, there's plenty of that on the wrecks. The ocean has an effect on all of us, but perhaps none so significant as it does on sunken ships. It's amazing how these weapons of war have been transformed by the blue world.
When we come back, Jonathan searches for the mimic octopus.
In the previous season of Blue World, I traveled to Dumaguete in the Philippines for a week diving with Atlantis Dive Resort in a search for an elusive octopus known as the Wonder Puss. The Wonder Puss is a rare master of disguise that lives in sandy habitats. But there is another, even harder to find octopus that lives in this same habitat, the mimic octopus. To find a mimic, I'm off again to the Philippines. But instead of Dumaguete, this time I'm heading to the rich biodiversity around Puerto Galera. In the village of Sabang, nestled along the beach, are a bunch of dive resorts, and I'm heading to my favorite, Atlantis. The facility is a luxury dive resort catering to discerning divers like me. It's nice. And most importantly, it's right on the water. As the crew readies our boat for the day, the divers set up their gear. I check my nitrox, and then our dive master Felix gives us a dive briefing.
Somebody get about 10 minutes if you can.
They pull the boats right up on the beach for easy access. Today, I get to share a boat with my good friends Howard and Michelle Hall, who are sporting their new Blue World hats. With our friend Ed Stetson and Zach of All Trades filming, we're off. After a short boat ride, Captain Tito helps us don our gear, and then
1, 2, 3, go!
we're hunting for mimics. This sandy bottom might not look that exciting, but it's full of life. A school of striped catfish are feeding in the sand. Nearby, a seahorse doing its best to look like algae. It's so easy to miss these little guys. You have to look closely at everything you see on the bottom. I move over to a small patch of coral to film some beautiful crinoids, which are plankton-feeding cousins of sea stars. Then I find a nudibranch that looks like it has a bunch of dreadlocks. And on the dreadlocks are little patches of algae called zooxanthellae. This nudibranch is literally called the solar-powered nudibranch because it gets most of its energy from the sun in a symbiotic relationship with this algae. So it's literally a solar-powered animal. I catch the shape of two eyes. I look closer thinking I've found my elusive mimic octopus, but it turns out to be a blue-spotted stingray hiding in the sand. It's amazing what you find when you're not looking for it. I stumble across a tiny wonderpuss. You can tell it's a wonderpuss because of its pencil-thin arms and orange-colored bands. Meanwhile, Howard is filming something intently, so I head over to see what he's found. Wouldn't you know it, he found a mimic octopus. It's easy to see how the mimic is confused with the wonderpuss. They both like to create banded patterns on their skin, and they're both small, living in the same habitat. But the mimic has more webbing between its arms and a browner coloration. But what makes the mimic so special is not how it looks, but how it acts. The mimic octopus gets its name because it likes to take on various shapes that some people think is mimicry. For example, when the mimic octopus travels across the sand, it takes on the shape and color of a flounder. A flounder is a flat fish that blends into the seafloor. It swims like a magic carpet, just above the sand. Is the mimic octopus trying to look like a flounder? or just taking on a shape which is universally effective for camouflage over sand. But not all of its behaviors are camouflage. Sometimes the mimic octopus dons stripes and walks along with its arms sticking out like the spines of a lionfish. Is it trying to frighten away predators with a lionfish impersonation? Because this is definitely not camouflage. Sometimes the mimic swims quickly by adopting a torpedo shape. But it also puts on a display of stripes, making some biologists convinced it's trying to look like a venomous sea snake. The various shapes and patterns that the mimic octopus can adopt are very impressive. And because they're not all camouflage, there is evidence that the octopus is mimicking other animals to deter predators. The mimic octopus eats mostly crabs and fish. It hunts for food by investigating every hole in the sand with probing arms. The skinny little arms can fit way down into even the smallest burrows. Like most octopods, the mimic can create an ink cloud. This dark cloud is meant to distract predators. While a predator is attacking the dark and obvious ink, the octopus goes all pale and hard to see while it squirts away to safety. And when underwater cinematographers just get too annoying, the octopus can bury itself in the sand and hide. After spending nearly an hour breathing from my scuba tank, my ability to mimic a sea creature has reached an end, and it's time to head back to the boat. Porto Galera is a scuba diver's paradise, with a wide variety of marine life for underwater photographers and critter lovers. The mimic octopus and wonderpuss are just two of the exotic creatures to be seen here. The reefs contain a variety of healthy coral and marine animals. I could spend a month diving Porto Galera and never get bored. It's no wonder Porto Galera is so popular with divers. There's so much to see in a small area. It's one of the best places to see weird and wonderful critters in the blue world.
Today on Blue World, the team discovers and explores a blue hole in the Bahamas. But first, high current diving in Palau. Meet Jonathan Bird, one of the world's top underwater nature cinematographers. Traveling the world on assignment for all the major networks, he is an Emmy Award-winning authority on the underwater world. In freshwater or salt, reefs, wrecks, or caves, Jonathan documents the world beneath the waves. Welcome to the Blue World.
The Republic of Palau is an island nation consisting of more than 500 beautiful, unspoiled islands in the Pacific. Camerawoman Julia and I have traveled halfway around the world to visit this tropical paradise, exploring both above and below the water. Our diving this week will be aboard the Rock Islands Aggressor, a luxury liveaboard dive yacht. Palau is located 500 miles east of the Philippines in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, pristine waters for world-class scuba diving. We've already done some incredible dives and experienced some of Palau's spectacular underwater wonders. We have visited coral caverns, found lots of sea turtles, met a curious Napoleon wrasse, and swam through walls and walls of fish over healthy reefs. But one thing we haven't seen much of: sharks. Yet Palau is known for its shark action. One of the only places we've seen sharks so far is off the stern of the boat. Blacktip reef sharks often approach large boats looking for some free food. Fishermen often throw their scraps to the sharks. So, where are all the rest of the sharks? Well, it turns out they like to hang out in some places where the diving is not so easy. After a few days of getting used to the underwater conditions, now our group is ready to take on a legendary dive site. We awake in a small protected bay off the island of Palau in the southern part of Palau. Palau is notorious for being the site of the bloodiest battle of the Pacific during World War II. Here, the United States and Japan fought for control of this tiny island in a battle that took over 2 months. 13,000 men lost their lives. Remnants of the battle are everywhere. During the battle, American troops stormed Palau Beach, now a peaceful lagoon. Just off the beach is Palau Corner, a reef that juts out into the ocean with a steep drop-off. Extreme currents rip up and across this reef, and this is where we're diving.
If the current is strong, we're not going to hook it. We're just going to drift.
The morning begins with a dive briefing. We all need to pay close attention because this dive site can be dangerous.
We can go to the corner, but we usually just stay at shallow depths rather than just right on the reef.
But we're ready.
You should make a dive for 2,300.
We drop into the water and quickly descend to the reef, which is bathed in clear oceanic water. The dive masters have dropped us upstream from the dive site, so we can drift with the current down to the perfect spot on the corner of the wall. This part is easy. Once we reach the spot, we have to fight the current to stay in position and maneuver to our desired places. Once we get there, we do something quite uncommon in scuba diving. We actually anchor into the reef with a short line that has a hook on it. Then we flap in the current like flags. This actually does less damage to the reef than having a bunch of people hanging on and kicking the coral. We float above the reef without any effort. And soon we have gray reef sharks around checking us out. So why are they here? The strong currents bring nutrients and plankton, which attracts large numbers of fish. They don't mind the current, and that attracts sharks. Unfortunately, because the sharks are here for fish, they have little interest in us. So sometimes they don't come very close. But every few minutes, a curious shark makes a pass to have a look at us. Without the reef hooks, this dive would be almost impossible, especially with a camera. The safest way to conduct this dive is to keep the group together. So after a while, we all unhook at the same time and drift down the reef to be picked up by the boat. We pass a large school of jacks. And a white-tip reef shark. And then a huge school of fish comes by. These are sailfin snapper, also known as blue-lined sea bream. Astonishingly, these are normally solitary fish. The only time they get together in schools like this is to spawn. And this school of fish seems to go on forever, like a river. But the shark action, as it turns out, isn't quite over. Just as we're getting ready to ascend to the boat waiting above, a huge shadow emerges from the blue. It's a whale shark! She's not the biggest whale shark I've ever seen, but whale sharks are extremely rare in Palau for some reason. And this is the first time most of the dive masters have ever seen one in their lives. As she heads off into the blue, everyone's a little disappointed. But I've been around whale sharks a lot, so I keep my camera ready. They often circle back for a look. And here she comes. I believe whale sharks are pretty intelligent and truly curious. Of course, when you see a whale shark, you have to do a celebratory dance. Whale sharks are so rare that when we tell the crew back on the Aggressor, they don't believe us.
Are you serious?
They actually saw a whale shark?
Are you serious?
As we celebrate over lunch, Captain Ike drives the boat out to open water on our way to the next dive site. Our next dive will be in the German Channel, where we will experience what could be described as an underwater river dive.
So we kneel down for a while, wait a little bit.
Soon we're on our way to another adventure involving strong current. We begin the dive at the mouth of the channel where the tide is pushing water up into the channel. With reef hooks in place, we wait for some shark action. A few sharks pass by, but there isn't too much going on. So we unhook and do a drift dive with the incoming current up the channel. The coral flies by, and we don't even have to kick. Scuba Steve is impersonating a manta ray. When we pass a couple of giant clams, I tuck out of the current to get a few shots. Even though giant clams are protected, it takes a long time for them to get this big. Although they feed on plankton by filtering it from the water with their siphons, they also collect solar power with the photosynthetic symbiotic algae in their skin. Soon I continue on my extremely strenuous dive, making my way back to the boat. Zooming at high speed back towards the Aggressor, Captain Ike spots something in the water off the port side of the tender. A huge pod of dolphins is converging on us quickly. Dolphins love to play in the bow wave of boats. It's their version of surfing. Zach runs to the bow to catch the action with a GoPro. I can't believe he even got an underwater shot. Soon we get too far from their stomping grounds and the dolphins turn back. And we return to our floating palace.
Don't go away. The Blue World team is about to explore a blue hole in the Bahamas.
The islands of the Bahamas are filled with formations called blue holes. They look like ponds, but they're actually deep holes in the limestone formed by erosion over thousands of years. In previous episodes of Jonathan Bird's Blue World, we have explored some of these mysterious sinkholes, like Cousteau's blue hole on Andros. Some blue holes were formed when the sea level was lower, thousands of years in the past. Now that the oceans are higher, those blue holes are underwater. These ocean blue holes are filled with seawater. Because ocean blue holes often lead into cave systems, which connect to other ocean blue holes, water can be pushed through these cave systems as the tide goes in or out. This strong current in the cave can suck a cave diver in to his death. The Exuma Islands of the Bahamas are famous for ocean blue holes. Recently, we explored Angelfish Blue Hole, a well-known and easily accessible ocean blue hole of Exuma. But today, we're on a mission. We want to find and explore an undiscovered ocean blue hole. Since the water in the Bahamas is so clear, and the ocean blue holes usually occur in a shallow spot, they can be seen from the air. But that also means they can be seen from a satellite. So we start our search with Google Earth. We're hunting for a dark spot that could be a blue hole and not too far from shore. Cameraman Zach has zeroed in on a possible candidate.
So you think that's a blue hole?
That's a blue hole.
The next day, we head over to see our friends Tamara and Jonathan at Dive Exuma to get some scuba tanks for our adventure. Then it's off to a remote part of the island in a quest to find our blue hole. On a lonely section of the island, we come to the end of the road, and there should be an ocean blue hole just offshore.
Wow. There has got to be a cave down there. I think we should launch the drone and have a quick look before. Yeah. All right, let's do it.
Zach of all trades launches the drone for a peek, and from the air it looks promising. It's definitely a deep depression in the sea floor. It has all the makings of a great cave dive. But the only way to be sure is to get a look underwater. From the shore, it looks pretty close, but it's actually a long swim. So cameraman Zach can scope it out faster by snorkeling than we could with all of our scuba gear. With the knowledge that there probably is a cave to explore, we start suiting up and preparing for the dive. After a long swim, we finally make it all the way over to the blue hole and submerge. There's no sign of that sea turtle, but there is a big school of grunts. The walls leading down into the depths are steep, and soon we're entering the cavern zone. There's an old lost fish trap. Zach ties off his reel, and we head into the cave. We can feel that the current is coming out of the cave, so it's safe for us to head in. Along the walls of the cave, there are all kinds of life that you don't see diving inland blue holes. The constant flushing of seawater brings nutrients and food to creatures in the cave. A lot of the fuzzy-looking stuff on the walls of the cave are hydroids and other invertebrates that sting humans. But crabs are immune. When Zach reaches the end of his primary reel, he ties on another spool. After progressing another 100 feet into the cave, something starts to feel different. So I check the current. Now the sand is getting sucked further into the cave. The tide has turned. It's time for us to get out of here, and fast. Back in the cavern zone, we can see daylight from above. We slowly rise into shallower water to do our mandatory decompression. In an inland blue hole, this might be kind of boring. But here in the ocean, there's plenty of marine life to observe. A school of tangs are nibbling on algae. A lionfish is stalking prey. Lionfish are absolutely beautiful, but they're an invasive species in these waters. It seems like fish love the entrance to a cave. But fish aren't the only residents here. Under a shelf, I find an army of spiny lobsters all lined up as if guarding their domain. Spiny lobsters don't have big claws like the lobsters in the North Atlantic, but their thick antennae are covered in sharp spines, making them formidable weapons. Finally, our decompression is completed and we can ascend back to the surface. We make our long swim back to shore, where Zach of all trades is waiting to hear the report. Mission completed. Ocean blue holes are beautiful and intriguing formations only found in a few places on Earth. Exuma is blessed with dozens, maybe even hundreds of these mysterious hidden gems. But people only regularly dive a handful of the easily accessible ones. We set out to find and explore our own blue hole, and there's a great sense of pride and satisfaction in finding something new and mysterious. We have no way of knowing if we were the first ones to dive this blue hole. Maybe not. But it's safe to say it's unlikely that very many other people have ever seen the inside of this cave. And since it has no official name, we've decided to call it the Blue World Blue Hole.
Today on Blue World, Jonathan discovers a lobster hotel in a cave. But first, he meets one of the most colorful and vocal fish in the Caribbean. Meet Jonathan Bird, one of the world's top underwater nature cinematographers. Traveling the world on assignment for all the major networks, he is an Emmy Award-winning authority on the underwater world. In freshwater or salt, reefs, wrecks, or caves, Jonathan documents the world beneath the waves. Welcome to the Blue World.
The island of Cozumel is a picture-perfect example of a diver's paradise. Crystal clear water surrounds the coasts, and just offshore, verdant reefs filled with healthy populations of fish, invertebrates, and sea turtles. Within the reefs, there are cracks and holes, some of which large enough for divers to explore. But the ones where divers don't fit become home to marine life. Fish hide from predators. Sharks rest. And in smaller holes, a rare reclusive fish, the splendid toadfish, one of the most photogenic and sought-after photo subjects in the Caribbean. In our search for this little beauty, Zach of all trades and I fly on down to Cozumel, Mexico, just off the coast of Cancun. We head on over to the marina, where we stop in with our friends at Scuba Life. These guys cater to small groups of divers like us. We fill out some paperwork, and we're on our way. While Captain Alex is taking us out to the dive site, I chat with JP, an expert toadfish spotter. He assures me we will find some toadfish. There are a lot of great dive sites around Cozumel, but we're heading to a place where JP knows of toadfish to be seen. I can't wait to get in the water and do my favorite thing, scuba diving.
Well, let's go find some toadfish.
When we hit the water, Zach, JP, and I don't even have to swim. Cozumel is famous for its drift diving. Water flows past the island like a giant river, so we just ride the current and glide above the reef. It's not a very good workout, because you just lay back and let the scenery go by. No kicking required. The problem comes when you want to stop. I find a hawksbill sea turtle chomping on sponges, so I have to kick to stay in place and hunker down. You would think that sea turtles would be experts at feeding in the current, but in her pursuit of the tastiest bites, she gets herself turned around backwards. Woohoo! Soon she decides to look in a different spot, and I realize just how hard it is to swim into this current. Making any headway upstream is nearly impossible. Captain Alex dropped us upstream of the spot where we'll find the toadfish, so we can have a nice drift over the reef. JP leads us over into a really nice section of coral. But you have to look fast, because if you go shooting past anything, it's not that easy to get back to it. Some of the fish play in the current, and some of the fish hide from it. A grouper hangs out in his living room and watches the action out the front door. When I pop in to say hi with my lights, he decides to take a swim around the neighborhood and get some exercise until I'm gone. Every little protected area on the reef has a school of fish hiding from the current. And most of them would rather pose for my camera than swim away. They're used to divers floating by. An arrow crab has taken refuge in a sponge, a soft bachelor pad to chill. As we continue downstream, we finally reach Toadfish City, and within 30 seconds, JP points out the first toadfish. So what is so special about this little fish? It has only been found in 2 places: the reefs of Cozumel and the reefs of the nearby island of Isla Mujeres. It's a super rare fish and normally doesn't come out of its den during the day. Its chin whiskers, called barbels, are chemosensitive, helping the fish find food in the sand. And while you might think they're called toadfish because they look a little bit like toads, they do something else. The croaking sound is made with the swim bladder, so they don't move their mouth to croak, and this is thought to be a mating call.
Hey ladies, come check me out!
Even though I have a pretty cooperative toadfish here sitting still for my camera and bright lights, I sure would like to see the whole fish. JP keeps looking. As the afternoon goes on and the light levels get lower, we have a better chance of finding one out looking for food. JP finds a lot more toadfish in their dens. Maybe some of them are listening for just the right croak from a potential partner. But then JP calls me over, and there it is, something I've never seen before. A splendid toadfish out of its den. It was probably looking for food, and now it's a little unsure what to do in front of my bright lights. I know the encounter isn't going to last long. And this is what you can't normally see. The spectacular yellow coloration. What could it possibly be for? Probably not camouflage. Maybe to attract a mate. Tired of my lights, the fish turns and disappears into the reef. Yet, amazingly, JP, the fish whisperer, finds another one. you can see that the toadfish has a pair of fins under its body called pelvic fins, used almost like a stubby little pair of legs. It can stand up and even walk on those fins. The sun really is getting low now, and so is our air. JP inflates a surface marker buoy to send up so that Captain Alex can find us. Who knows how far we drifted since we splashed off the boat.
You know, I always wondered why they called them toadfish, but now I know. It has nothing to do with how they look. They croak!
Cozumel is a fantastic dive destination. The current feeds nutrients to the reef, and as a result, the life on the reefs flourishes. There are so many fish and sea turtles, every dive is exciting. And it's nice to know I'm not the only one who can be clumsy. The splendid toadfish is a rare gem of a fish, found in the water around only 2 islands in the whole world. It's a beautiful and, yes, splendid inhabitant of the blue world.
Don't go away. Jonathan and cameraman Zach explore a cave in the Bahamas.
In recent years, I've become fascinated with cave diving. I've been diving in caves in Mexico, caves in Florida, and caves in Abaco, Bahamas. They all have one thing in common. These caves are accessed by land. But there are also caves on the bottom of the ocean. So I'm on my way to the Exumas, a beautiful chain of Bahamian islands, to explore some ocean caves. The Zacks and I land on Grand Exuma to begin our grand adventure. The Exumas are located in the southern Bahamas, a quick flight from Miami. They are known for being some of the most beautiful islands in the world, with super blue water and white sand beaches. But also, they're known for having a lot of ocean caves. We've brought all of our cave diving gear, which makes for an impressive pile of luggage. Soon we're off, and these are not the best roads we've ever seen. We head over to Dive Exuma and meet owners Tamara McGaw Robinson and Jonathan Robinson.
Hi, Tamara.
Hi, Jonathan. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. You ready to go diving?
Yes.
All right, let's go.
Let's go.
Jonathan is the boat captain, and today also the dive master. Zach and I start setting up our gear while we wait for the rest of the divers to show up. Soon everyone else is here, and Captain Jonathan, I like the sound of that, gives us a quick boat briefing. Then it's time to push off. We only have a 10-minute ride to the dive site, which is near Stocking Island, just across the bay. Stocking Island has a picture-perfect bay providing safe anchorage for a bunch of sailboats. But right in the middle of this bay is a blue hole, an underwater cave entrance. Captain Jonathan gives the group a dive briefing. Most of the divers on the boat are not cave divers, so they're only going to see the cavern section where they can see daylight. Cameraman Zach and I, however, brought full side-mount cave gear to do a deeper inspection. It seems weird to be donning this stuff on a boat. Once all the open water divers have hit the water, we gear up. I've never done a water entry from a boat with side-mount gear, so here it goes. Graceful. It's been really windy recently, so the visibility's a little murky. But as we sink down, we immediately find the huge, yawning mouth of the blue hole. Zach leads the charge as we sink into the deep. Heading down, we pass one of the other divers. As it gets darker, we start switching on our video lights. As the opening narrows, we can feel the strong rush of water coming out of the cave. Ocean caves are tidal, which means sometimes water is rushing out and other times it's rushing in. You never want to dive one of these caves when the water is rushing in, because it might suck you in and you won't be able to get back out. This is about as far as the other divers can go, with the light of day visible so they know the way out. Zach stops to film the cave walls. Unlike the bare rock walls of inland caves, ocean caves are full of encrusting marine life on every surface, like hydroids and sponges. It can be very sharp and some of it stings, so we definitely wear gloves. Some of the sponges are quite colorful and beautiful. This encrusting life even grows on the cave line. We struggle upstream in the current. It's over 100 feet deep, and we're exerting ourselves, so this kind of dive can be dangerous. I can barely hold myself in position for a shot kneeling on the bottom. I'm really glad this current is trying to push me out of the cave, not the other way around. Forget about the classic cave diving frog kick. I need to kick as hard as I can to make forward progress. Fortunately, all the silt I'm kicking up goes immediately downstream. We discover why the cave line in this cave is not just a thin string, but a thick rope. Sometimes you need it to get around a corner. After fighting our way into the cave for 20 minutes, we finally turn around and enjoy floating out with the current. So easy and relaxing. The strong current through these tunnels coming from somewhere deep out in the ocean brings a constant supply of nutrients from the open ocean to feed all of the creatures growing on the walls, floor, and ceiling. It takes barely 90 seconds to get back to the cavern zone where I can see light from the sun and a school of parrotfish. Captain Jonathan is standing there waiting for us like Aquaman. The current shoots us up and out of the blue hole. In fact, we have to be careful not to ascend too fast. Zach stops to film some fish. We both have decompression stops to do. The dive wasn't long, but it was deep. We slowly make our way up into the shallows. There isn't much to see in this small bay. Finally, we surface at the stern of the boat.
Woo! Man, that was quite a ride. Woo! Is Zach still with me? Up there he is.
We pass our tanks up, having completed our first ocean cave dive. But that's not all we're going to see today. Captain Jonathan has another neat cave to show us. We take another 10-minute ride across the bay to a secret spot and suit up again. In just 15 feet of water, there's a small crack in the bottom. It's tiny, but with side mount gear, we can sneak in there. Zach goes first to investigate, leaving his camera behind. The flow out of this crack is amazing. He can barely make headway. A minute later, he comes back up and it's my turn. He passes me my camera and I head down, light rays bouncing off the sides. When I get to the bottom, I'm in a super narrow cavern zone. I can't go very far before the passage is too small, but I do find a lobster hotel full of tons of huge spiny lobsters. Then I turn and head back up towards the sun. I emerged super excited just because that was a really cool experience. Ocean caves are extremely different from inland caves, subject to tidal flows which can change direction, and full of marine life decorating the walls. They can be a lot of work to explore, but so satisfying as well. Fortunately, we have several more blue holes to explore on Exuma, so the fun isn't over yet in the blue world.
Today on Blue World, a cave dive with sharks. But first, something even weirder, swimming with pigs. Meet Jonathan Bird, one of the world's top underwater nature cinematographers. Traveling the world on assignment for all the major networks, he is an Emmy Award-winning authority on the underwater world. In freshwater or salt, reefs, wrecks, or caves, Jonathan documents the world beneath the waves. Welcome to the Blue World.
The Bahamian Exuma Islands are famous for being some of the most beautiful on Earth. They're known as the yachting capital of the world, a haven for swimming pigs, and of course, an ocean blue hole dive paradise. Wait a minute, swimming pigs? This I've got to see. My adventure begins with a flight to the remote Exuma Islands of the Bahamas. As we fly in, I can see why people say they're so beautiful. Look at that water. The Zacks are excited. Soon we land on Great Exuma and load our van. We take a trip up north to Exuma Point Beach Bar to rendezvous with local celebrity Elvis Rowley. We load our gear onto a small boat, Elvis takes us out. We make a short run to a small island just offshore. As we pull up to the beach, we're greeted by a welcoming committee. And they wade right up to the boat. Some say that the pigs were stranded here after fleeing a sinking ship and swimming to the closest island. Others insist that the pigs were left long ago by sailors to fatten up so they could be eaten later. But this is not a very good place to fatten up a pig. There isn't much to eat and no fresh water. Elvis throws them some bread, which is a favorite snack. Of course, pigs are notoriously not very picky eaters. Sometimes he brings vegetables or whatever he has on hand. The pigs don't really care. But of course, I like to swim with the marine life, so in I go.
Find out. Hey guys! Up in.
With a piece of bread, I want to see if I can get a pig to demonstrate actual swimming. And yes, they can actually swim. They also know who has the snacks. And is there anything cuter than a swimming piglet? The pigs have this entire island to themselves, and while they can forage for their own food to a degree, Elvis does need to bring out fresh water for them to drink. We're having fun playing with the swimming pigs, but we came to go cave diving. So the next day we grab our gear and head on over to Dive Exuma. Boat and start putting our cave diving gear together. Then Captain Jonathan pushes off and we're on our way. We're heading to Stocking Island, a favorite destination for the yachting crowd because of the extremely well-protected harbor. And within this harbor, something easily visible from the air. The entrance to an ocean cave that goes under the island. With the boat moored only a few fin kicks from the entrance to the cave, cameraman Zach and I start suiting up. My water entry is as graceful as ever. Then we descend. We've timed our dive just past slack tide, so the tide is gently pushing water out of the cave. This means we swim against the flow to get into the cave, making our return trip back out of the cave safer and easier. Fish love to hang out in the entrance to the cave, but we pass right by, heading towards the darkness that lies beyond. At the back of the cavern zone, Zach ties his reel to a rock, then leads the way ahead. The water coming out of the cave is not that clear. Recent storms have churned up the ocean, and this water's coming in from somewhere under the ocean on the other side of the island. The murkiness makes it pretty spooky. The walls of the cave are absolutely covered in colorful sponges and tunicates, fed by a constant supply of ocean nutrients forced through the cave by the tides. These simple animals thrive in complete darkness, their color never seen unless illuminated by artificial light. Eventually, we find the remnants of an old guideline placed in the cave untold years ago by previous explorers, but not suitable for use anymore. So Zach carries on with his reel. Unfortunately, we soon hit the end of the line, literally. So we tie on a spool and keep going. Eventually, we reach an older section of cave line that looks pretty solid, so we tie on. There is so much marine life on this line that it looks like a rope reef. As we proceed further into the cave, following the rope along the silty bottom, the walls begin to narrow. As the water flows through this thin slot in the rocks, the velocity of the water increases, so swimming against the current is more difficult. Our air consumption rises. Protocol in cave diving means that you can only use 1/3 of your air on the way into the cave. You leave another third for the swim out, and the last third is for reserve in case of an emergency. And even though I really want to see what's around the next corner, we have to turn back. Fortunately for us, the swim out is super easy because now we're going with the tide, gliding along with very little effort. We follow the reef rope back to Zach's spool. Hand-winding the spool fast enough to keep up with the water movement is a challenge. Winding the primary spool is a lot easier. And within only a fraction of the time it took to swim into the cave, we reached the cavern zone again. Of course, knowing that we would get a fast, free ride out of the cave, we could have gone past our thirds and explored a little further, but that's breaking the rules, and cave diving is one place where you don't break the rules. Of course, that extra air means we have plenty of time for an extended safety stop watching the fish in the cavern zone. And finally, it's time to head back to the warm sun above us. Captain Jonathan helps us remove gear in the water to make the ladder easier.
That was sweet.
That was an awesome dive.
Nice.
The Exuma Islands of the Bahamas are a beautiful place. The blue water and protected moorings make it special for sailing, but the ocean caves make it exciting for cave divers, one of the few places in the world with so many such dives. I don't know when we'll be back to the Exumas, but I sure wouldn't mind another dive trip to explore more of these unique underwater formations in the blue world.
Don't go away. Jonathan finds reef sharks sleeping in caves.
Contrary to popular belief, many different kinds of sharks rest on the bottom. But reef sharks are not a species normally associated with this behavior. However, we learned of a place near Cozumel where reef sharks seem to be sleeping in coral caverns. So Zach of all trades and I hop on a plane to Cozumel to investigate. Cozumel is an island famous for scuba diving right off the coast of Mexico near Cancun. It's known for very clear water and lots of fish, but also for exciting drift diving because of the moderate current. In recent years, it has also become popular in the cruise ship crowd, so most of the dive shops cater to larger groups of divers from the cruise ships. However, I'm heading to Scuba Life Cozumel, a shop that caters to smaller groups of more experienced divers who want to do more. At the shop, we'll fill out some paperwork in preparation for tomorrow's big adventure. JP has been fascinated by the caves of the sleeping sharks for many years, and is one of the only people who knows where they sleep and how to find them. With Captain Alex at the helm, we leave the marina and set up our gear. My hopes are high that we can fulfill my dream to find and film a sleeping shark in a cave. As the sun rises, we're going past all the other dive boats out to a special spot that only JP knows about.
Well, this is the part I hate, getting suited up. It takes so long. Woo, that took forever. Time to go find some sharks.
We sink down to the reef, and the current is not that strong, which isn't a good sign because the sharks like to sleep when the current is stronger. But we still have a look. We find a large, fearless, spiny lobster posing bravely for my camera. But I can't spend time here when we have caves to search. The caves here are not really caves, but in fact coral caverns. You can always see light from the opening. But I must admit I'm a little apprehensive about coming around a corner and frightening a sleeping shark. The walls of the caverns are covered in marine life, such as coral and sponges, making them very colorful. Zach of all trades and I are having a blast swimming through this labyrinth of tunnels, and it's sort of like an intro to cave diving for Zach. Above my head on the ceiling, I notice there are a lot of lionfish hiding. Lionfish are invasive species in the Caribbean, eating all the baby fish of other species, so the dive masters in Cozumel, as in many other places in the Caribbean, are trying to control the population. JP spears a large one on every dive to do his part, but it won't go to waste. As we leave the caverns and work our way back up the reef, I can see how healthy these reefs are, with tons of coral and sponges. JP leads the way into another cavern on our shark hunt. We look everywhere, but we just can't find a shark. Eventually, we're low on air, and it's time to head back to the boat. JP launches an SMB, a surface marker buoy, so Captain Alex can find us as we drift with the current away from the dive site.
Well, we got to the cave, but no sharks.
As the day progresses, the ocean is getting rougher, but conditions are getting better for sharks because the current is picking up too. So we move the boat to another cave site and hit the water again. JP has located a number of shark caves, but there's no way to know when a shark is in there without going down to look. And this one looks empty. But JP brought the lionfish just in case there are any sharks nearby that might want a snack. We have a look inside just to be sure. There's a Caribbean reef shark hanging around, but she's definitely not sleeping. Maybe she's hungry. The tangs certainly are. She definitely can smell lunch and seems interested. But as a small juvenile shark, she's scared of us and keeps her distance. So JP places the lionfish on the bottom, and we back up to see what she does. Because of the toxic spines on even a dead lionfish, sharks need to pick them up carefully. And eventually, she makes off with her prize. We take one last look around the cave to see if any sharks came to rest, but it's still empty. We move to another location, but this one's going to be a challenge. As I hit the water, I'm pulled away from the boat before I can even reach up for my camera. The current is ripping. We sink down and fly over the bottom, no cave in sight. We missed it completely. So Alex moves the boat a little further upstream from the cave, and we try again. This time we make it to the cave, but again, no sharks. I'm beginning to wonder if these sleeping sharks really exist.
No sharks?
No sharks that time.
After 10 hours on the boat, we're well into late afternoon. This is our last chance, and the last cave that JP knows about. Somehow we hit it perfectly. The entrance is guarded by a school of snapper. Snappers? What is the plural of snapper? Fish. As we approach the mouth of the cave, JP sees a shark. I have no idea where he seems to be pointing. I don't see squat. Honestly, I think he's pulling my leg. But I go in there anyway, and I can't believe my eyes. A big, sleeping Caribbean reef shark way in the back. I'm afraid I will spook her if I approach too quickly, so I start by filming from 10 feet away and slowly work my way closer. But she doesn't seem to care. She lets me get right up close. She really does seem to be sleeping. There are a couple theories about what the sharks are doing. One study found that fresh water was seeping up from the seafloor into these caves, making the salinity lower, which might help remove parasites from the sharks. But since the sharks only seem to come here when the current is strong, another theory suggests that they can rest easier when the current helps push water through their gills. Whatever the reason, this is the only place in the world where sharks seem to go into caves to sleep. And they really are snoozing. Eventually, I end up only 3 feet from this large shark, and she hasn't moved a muscle. Unfortunately, this cave is 110 feet deep, which means even with nitrox, I don't have much time. All too soon, we need to head back to the surface. But first we celebrate. JP delivered. We have a long decompression stop before we can surface, but I sure don't mind because we nailed it. What a day. As we head back to the dock at the end of the day, I'm so excited to have visited a place I read about in a magazine when I was a kid, and to have seen a natural behavior of sharks which is incredibly rare, known only here in the waters around Cozumel. The sharks are the icing on the cake to some of the most beautiful coral caverns I've ever seen, in crystal clear, warm, tropical water. Cozumel really is a diver's paradise, and I'm already planning my next trip with JP and Scuba Life Cozumel.